This is the book Winchee, Mission Stories of Colin and Melva Winch by S Ross Goldstone. The true adventures of missionary pilots and nurses in the South Pacific, as retold to the children of Watertown SDA Church. I'm your storyteller, Austin Bacchus. Let's go!
So our chapter today is called Night Flight. The Papuan Gulf Mission Committee meetings were being held, and Colin was at the meeting in Kikori, staying with Lewis and Dulcie Parker, whose mission station was near the airstrip, built in swamp country. A message came to them from the government station, located on the other side of the airstrip, notifying them that a man had been shot in the face by a 12-gauge shotgun. The man had been caught being amorous with another man's wife, and the husband had taken revenge by virtually blowing the offender's face off. The damage was too horrible to be handled at the local clinic, so the request was to transport the wounded man to Port Moresby. Colin agreed to do so, even though it was 9 o'clock and pitch black. He suggested that Lewis, a fellow pilot, accompany him so he might gain more experience in night flying. After removing all the seats in the Andrew Stewart, that was the name of their airplane, except those of the pilot and co-pilot, the semi-conscious patient, brought on a litter or a stretcher, was loaded into the plane, made as comfortable as possible on the floor, and secured with seat belts. Colin and Lewis prayed over the moaning patient and prepared for takeoff, notifying Port Moresby that they were about to take off with a seriously injured patient on board, requesting that an ambulance be on site for their arrival. Lantern carriers had lined the edges and the end of the runway to give direction and light, because they had no way of seeing where the runway was otherwise. The whole airstrip was covered in metal Marsden matting that allowed aircraft to land on boggy fields. This was a leftover from World War II. As a plane landed or took off, it would set up a loud rattling sound as it moved over the metal plates. The lightly loaded airplane lifted quickly above the rattling plates and commenced climbing into the black night sky. Immediately, Colin was dependent on instrument flying, and once his designated elevation had been achieved, he set course for Port Moresby, expecting good weather for the flight. It was a beautiful night for flying as they flew down the coast of Papua, but ahead they saw evidence of a huge storm, indicated by flashes of lightning in the clouds. They would have to fly through the storm to reach their destination. They soon entered the cloud and hit the turbulence. Sucked high into the air by the updraft, then plunging earthward by the downdraft, Colin battled with the controls to keep the little plane level. The patient was moaning and crying out in fear through the turbulence, since it was his first flight. Some 20 minutes later, they popped out of the storm into welcoming, smooth air once more. Ahead could be seen the glow from the lights of Port Moresby. Colin advised traffic control of their approach and questioned whether an ambulance had been arranged. He was assured the ambulance was already waiting on the tarmac. The landing was without incident, and Colin taxied to the waiting ambulance, into which the patient was transferred, then rushed off for immediate surgery. Unknown to the two missionary pilots, the media had been advised of the flight, and they were on hand to take photos and record the happening for the local newspaper. It was good public relations for the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Papua New Guinea. Years later, Colin, who at that time was president of the Papua New Guinea Union Mission, attended the Papuan Gulf Camp meeting, and he was introduced to a man with a really badly scarred face. This was the patient that he and Lewis had flown to Port Moresby on that fateful night. The injured man was so impressed with the care that these men had provided him that on release from hospital in Port Moresby, he returned to Kikori, began an association with the local Adventists, and eventually became a baptized church member. God has 1,000 ways to bring about His eternal purposes.
Be sure to tune in next time for more stories from the book Winchee by S Ross Goldstone, which is available at the Adventist Book Center. And meanwhile, check out these videos and others on my channel, with many more mission stories and Bible skits for kids and adults. God bless you.